child protection caseworkers as well. But there's certainly a rogue element out there.
I think the other thing too that presents a problem here is that the newspaper has a monopoly. It's a total monopoly. The weekly newspaper, the Sunday paper are all owned. There's no other paper, and it's all owned by Kerry Stokes, who also owns Channel 7 and heaps of other things. So it's there's no competition here. It's a monopoly. So you only get what's going to go into that newspaper.
And so I do know, I do know that journalists are told to not publish certain stories.
So one of the big questions coming in here then, Mary and Charles, is, if Virginia's now being cremated, there's no exhumation or anything possible. Is it case closed? Is there no investigations ongoing?
There was no autopsy. There was no autopsy. The police, right from the word go, said no suspicious circumstances. Her father asked for an investigation. So many people have come out, credible people, lawyers, etc., have come out and said they don't believe it. But, she was cremated so very quickly after she died that whatever, if there was any degree of investigation, it was very limited. So I think honestly the procedure is say nothing, keep it quiet, and let it be yesterday's news, and hopefully it'll go away.
Yeah.
And who do you think the vested interests are, Mary, that are controlling this narrative?
Who do I think the vested interest is? It's very interesting that the US are reluctant to release this documentation on Epstein. That only 2 people, even though many have been named, only 2 people have been arrested. What about the rest of them? What about the rest of them? And this has been this is not recent. This is long-standing. Nobody else has been arrested, and now there's pressure on the powers that be in the US and Trump, because he made a pre-election promise that he would release these files, and then in a video that I saw, he says, "Oh, nobody's really interested in the Epstein files." Well, that's not strictly true. We are interested in the Epstein files, and there is pressure because of that pre-election promise to say you need to release them. One of the big questions is, why not? Why are you withholding them? Why are there no arrests? Why are the other people involved here being able to get away with being the perpetrators of these trafficked children, who are all children? This is a crime. It's a crime. And yet nobody's been held accountable for being the partaker in all of it. You've got Epstein, who trafficked. Yes, he organized it. Maxwell organized it. They introduced these girls to the perpetrators. But what about the perpetrators? In normal circumstances, if people have sexual relations with children, they're charged. It hasn't happened. And with Kash Patel and the person, I can't even remember his name, begins with B, if they can come out and say, well, we're absolutely sure, we can say categorically Epstein basically hung himself, he suicided. And even then, you've got to think, okay, where's the accountability there? Why weren't the cameras working? Is this, obviously the prison is not functioning properly either. What about the guards that fell asleep? Were they charged? Did they lose their jobs? It's just all gone poof.
Usually we see everybody get promoted in situations like this.
Yes,
I know with the guards,
do.
if you go back to the history of the building from the 1970s, there was no record of 2 guards ever falling asleep simultaneously since that jail was started. But I don't know if I mentioned to you, Mary, last time, and perhaps Charles is unaware, that my theory was pharmacide, whereby vested interests through intermediaries, trolls, black ops, whatever, Lady Victoria Hervey, Epstein collaborators as identified by Boyes, Virginia's lawyer. That side of the equation is that they're constantly putting pressure on Virginia, stressing her out. And on the other side of it, you know, she's got some doctor, she's getting the pharmacy, the big pharma medications increased to deal with her stress. She's got this cocktail going on with her kidneys, all these different drugs. And my theory was it would come out that, you know, she was under so much stress, she took this cocktail, and it would come out in the autopsy, a complete list of all of these different drugs. Well, are you saying now that we will never get that information?
No, they're not saying, they are not saying who was at the farm at 10 o'clock at night and alerted the emergency services. They're not telling us that, even though there was CCTV at the farm. They are not telling us what actually killed her. They're not saying how she died. They're just not saying so. And yes, she was, look, she must have been under stress for ever since she decided she was going to come out and speak. She really handled a lot more stress. What did she say? You know, I fought back against Epstein. I fought back about Maxwell. So she was a strong lady. She had plans. This is what the lawyers were saying. She was positive about the future. She had plans for the future. She was going to renovate. She was planning a rally of some sort. She'd also established a not-for-profit organization to support victims. This was not a lady that was going to say, I'm throwing the towel in. And not only that, she was missing her children. Well, the VRO probably was the thing that stopped her from seeing the children. She could have fought that. She was in the process of fighting that through the courts. And she would easily have proven that she's the victim, not him. And that in that instance would have got her children back. And I think, you know, she would have been fighting for that. She would have been looking to do that. She's not going to think, okay, I give up and not bother. She just was not that person.
So you've got a comment here that I think needs to be addressed, because it's kind of like putting the blame on Virginia when Virginia was brainwashed and groomed. And this person's saying she went back to Epstein time after time, year after year. If it was so bad, why would she keep going back? And you guys have got experience in people who are groomed and brainwashed. So do you guys want to explain the mechanics of that?
Well, one of the things that I would say is that she was broken as a little girl because she was abused in her own home. And the process then, she was in the streets. She was a foster child. She spent 6 months with a guy who was arrested for trafficking children. So, you know, she had a whole life of being broken and being vulnerable. She was trapped. I mean, they were powerful people, you know, to say, okay, I don't want to be here anymore. I'm going to go. I'm going to leave. Bye-bye. It's interesting to see that the time that she did leave was when she met Robert Giuffre. She had support. She had somebody who was taking care of her. She had somewhere to go. Other than that, she did not. She had nowhere to go. It's like, how do you get away from them? How?
Yeah, I think I can add to that too, because I've worked with a lot of women in domestic violence situations. It comes down to fear. They're so afraid that if they leave their perpetrators that the perpetrators are going to come after them. So they need to be absolutely sure that they have safe refuge when they do actually leave. Many of them go back time after time. It's just a normal psychological process, unfortunately.
And she was very, very young.
Yeah. Now, as far as meeting her husband, that's an interesting situation, I find, as well. So she was in Thailand at the time and met him there. They got married 10 days afterwards. I don't know if there's any linkage to things I've experienced or observed over the years, but what I've seen is that if certain women are required to be controlled, it appears, by the state, then men are sort of put into their paths. I'm told they get love bombed. So, that sort of thing. They're made to feel really good. So I just wonder if this is a similar sort of situation.
I met somebody like that as well. And they were a victim of somebody very, very high profile. And they had a minder that lived with them, answered the phone, couldn't get through to that person. They wanted to know who you were, what you wanted. That person definitely had a minder. So I do believe that happens.
I'll read this comment from Stuart. We're getting into Stockholm syndrome. That's where the hostages start to identify with their captors and even defend or join them. It makes no sense to someone outside that situation, but it happens. What do you think of that?
Yeah, that's correct.
Yeah, yep. Stockholm syndrome is a situation where there are mixed messages. We love you, we hate you. We're going to look after you, we're going to take care of you. And then the next thing you know, you're thrown into a cupboard, or you're beaten up, or you're severely abused. So you get those two things going at the same time, that you get the person that's taking care of you, the person that says that they care about you, is also the person who is abusing you. And it's all happening at the same time. And it's a big screw up. It just absolutely screws you up big time. The result of it is that you develop a almost obsessive connection to your abuser. There was an heiress. They found this out when they did research on an heiress, Patty
Hearst.
Somebody.
Hearst.
Yeah, Patty Hearst. She ended up being kidnapped and then joining the gang. She picked up rifles and did the bank robberies along with them. And when she did get rescued and had to then, be deprogrammed. It's a very, you get people who are very, very good at it. They can give you both messages at the same time.
So we've got a question from Margaret, and I'm wondering as well if you've learned anything more about the carer. Margaret wants to know, was the husband in any way related to the carer? And also there was a news story saying about he'd arranged the carer for Virginia. I don't know if that's true or not. What have you found out?
I haven't heard anything about it. There's been nothing, well, in the limited amount of publications that we've been allowed to see. There's nothing about the carer. She's another one. She's gone into oblivion. There's just been absolutely nothing about the carer. She's not referred to. So after the car accident and the interaction she had with the bus driver, that's all we know of her. I have heard that the husband employed her, and maybe that came about the time when she separated from him. Who knows? Who knows?
Okay, so you've got a question from Deborah. Mary, do you know anything more about Virginia's family and the cremation? Who actually got her cremated?
Well, I think you just have to use logic in that her husband is, because he's not charged, there's no allegations against him. in normal circumstances, the funeral arrangement would go to your spouse, and I would imagine that is what's happened. He hasn't spoken out at all. There's not a beep out of him in the media or in articles or on the internet, nothing. The logical thing is he was in control and he organized it. But the other really odd thing is that, yes, okay, it got a little article in the West Australian on page 11, but it also says that she was actually cremated days before that. So it's all very, very odd. It seems like it was all done in, well, it was all done in secret. And the other really odd thing, the real odd thing is that the police are announcing that they are in the process of writing their report to the coroner. Is that normal? Wouldn't the police have to report to the coroner before a cremation? I mean, I'm no expert. I don't know. I can't say that which way it goes, but that's odd to me.
I did a bit of research. I did a bit of research on that today, actually. So it's very interesting that the police said there was no suspicious circumstances around her passing. What happens then is that an autopsy is not required, but if there's suspicious circumstances around a death, generally the coroner will request an autopsy. So it certainly seems like a narrative in this situation.
So that, the question is, can they do a funeral without a full autopsy in Australia? What's the legality of it? So you're saying that they can?
They can if there's no suspicious. They can if there's no suspicious circumstances.
And who decides whether there's suspicious circumstances or not?
The police.
Well, obviously the police did.
Yeah. And they announced that at her death. The same announcement.
Yeah, on the first day.
They announced no suspicious circumstances straight away. They hadn't even done an investigation. They hadn't talked to anybody.
Yeah.
And as Laureen's pointed out, how much more suspicious could it have been? I mean, what's the criteria?
I'm with you, Laureen. I'm with you.
Yeah, there should have been an autopsy just based on her name alone. Indeed.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. She's had no notoriety here at all. She's had none.
So a coroner can actually order an exhumation as well, if that's required. So it's interesting that she was cremated.
Oh yeah.
So John said the biggest horse doping involving Aga Khan was in Perth. That was suppressed, and they burnt the horse's body. Wow.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. Say no more.
Yeah, that's the way it works over here.
Yeah.
If she died in her home alone, that should have meant definite autopsy.
Well, how do we know whether she was alone or not? Look, it's 10 o'clock at night. It's a remote farm. It's out in the countryside. Whoever called it in had a way into the house. And obviously it's somebody that she knew. There's no reports of any break-ins or anything like that. And who was there? Who would have been there at 10 o'clock at night?
So Stacey's saying,
go on.
Stacey's saying the injury from the car accident would have been suspicious and could have caused her death, yet they didn't even look again.
No,
so
they
the information we have around the car accident is that it was only a nudge and that it wasn't sufficient to cause injury.
However, the carer has actually said that she rang the bus driver, told the bus driver the passenger had a black eye, and the passenger went that Virginia was in hospital. So if it's a minor accident, just the tail light that's been smashed, how did Virginia get a black eye, according to the carer, and put into hospital? But I mean, there's a big thing about the fact that she says that she's got 4 days to live, and everybody's going, "Oh yeah, she's a liar." Da 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 da. But there's an issue around that as well, because a family come out and say, "Well, probably the bus accident saved her life," because when she got to the hospital, they then were able to do an examination, found that she had a problem with her kidneys, and were able to address that problem while she was in the hospital. So they've probably said something to her like, you know, "Boy, we found a really serious thing to do with your kidneys, and we need to get onto that straight away." And that's how come she's got, "Oh, I've been told that, you know, if I don't get immediate assistance, I'm going to die." Well, yes, maybe that was the case in that circumstance, because that was actually found as a result of the bus accident and the hospitalization.
You've got a few people asking about her relationship with her kids, and if the kids wanted to see her or they didn't want to see her.
As far as the kids are concerned, I would say when he got a violence restraining order on himself, he probably got it on the kids as well, which is why they would not have been allowed to contact her. She does say somewhere that the children have been told lies. So I would say that that's all accumulative. She loved the children, you know, it becomes very obvious that she had a lot of love for her children.
Do we know how long she'd been kept away from her kids for?
Yeah, it would have been January. It would have been January of this year when he went in and got a VRO after beating her.
And do you
Yeah,
think
because
that
that
he
was all
poisoned...
over the news at the time. So it
Yeah.
was all over the news here in Perth that Virginia was attending court, or she had a court appearance. They didn't say what for, but you could tell it was a family court type incident.
Do you think the husband managed to turn the kids against her?
It's looking that way, yeah. The VRO would have been in a magistrate's court, or wouldn't it, Charles? The VRO, I think, was in Joondalup Magistrates Court, not the family court. Yeah.
Yeah,
But, you
but
know,
I
it's
did.
I think the big thing here for me is, why wasn't he charged? Why wasn't he charged? You know, she's hospitalized. She's got fractured sternum or something. She's got some really serious injuries. It's reported to the police. We've got a big hoo-ha about domestic violence and women dying from domestic violence. Why did the Perth police not charge him? He had firearms. They didn't take his firearms off him. They just said, "Oh, naughty boy, you haven't got them stored properly."
Well, martial arts centres are hotbeds for the police coming to do their training. So perhaps there's some kind of boys' club there with the cops and the martial arts connection.
I guess that, you know, that's all up for speculation. Does it link back to the Epstein files being released and victims having to be silenced? You know, how we can't actually say categorically that's happening, but it's all inferred because of the timeline.
All right, so you got a question from Agent Orange. Was she on hospice care?
When at what stage are we talking?
That would have prior to her coming home, I guess, when she was injured.
No, she was after the bus accident.
Yeah.
You know, after the bus accident, she was, I think she attended court after the bus accident. So no, she was quite active. It would appear.
She was in hospital for 4 days, as far as I know, and went home straight after that.
So Rose wants to know, if she was cremated, what can be done now to prove that she did not take her life?
Yeah,
Nothing.
well,
That's the point.
the only thing you can do is look at the circumstances. And the problem here is, though, that you can raise all sorts of suspicious circumstances unless you have somebody with the guts and in a place of power to actually do a proper investigation, look into it in depth. It will all go just fizz away because nobody has the guts to come out and do a proper investigation.
Kelly wants to know, is the family court done behind closed doors in Australia?
So in Australia, we have a really funny system over here. So the child protection system, which is the state-based child removals, that's all state-based. The family court, where when you've got warring parents, that's federal. Except for Western Australia, which is very different. So Western Australia is the only state where the family court is run by the state. And
So
someone asked before if they're closed courts. Yes, they are. However, I think the Western Australian version of the family court isn't, because I've been into that.
Yeah, I've been in there too, and the public are allowed in. But we have a system here is where children that may be apprehended, they will go to what they call a children's court, which is specifically dealt with that. Not many mothers win custody back from their children in the children's court. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, that's right.
Maria wants to know, do you guys think that by silencing her, the intention was to silence others?
Oh, yeah, definitely. Because, you know, one of the victims come forward and said that she is now terrified for her own life. That's Juliet.
Well, we interviewed Juliet, and she was living in a compound with attack dogs, in a secure compound. The attack dogs were jumping around while we were interviewing her.
Yeah. Yeah. So, yeah. And she has come out publicly saying she was scared. She's now terrified. Virginia is the third one of the victims who have spoken out, who are young, have died young.
So Anna wants to know if it was called in by her stepbrothers who were at the property.
Well, because the police won't say who called it in.
Yeah.
They are, you know, refusing to release that information. So, you know, it's all up for speculation. You don't know who did it. Whoever it was at that house would have been caught on CCTV. So there's no way that the police don't know who was at that house.
So there's no like public information request that can be done to get the information. It's completely sealed, is it?
Oh yeah, it's done, dusted. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Wow.
Because it's only the police that can do an investigation, and they made up their minds right at the word go. They weren't going to do that. They knew they knew how she died. Well, there's no suspicious circumstances, and yet you've got all this weird stuff going on. If you have a woman beaten up to a pulp and hospitalized weeks before she dies, to me, I'm no expert, but that's a suspicious circumstance.
Definitely. So Sarah's saying, please talk about how we can help. I am desperate to get justice for Virginia and getting Prince Andrew held to account. What can I do? Writing to an MP?